I don't even know sleep, but we can talk about that too, because that's a lot. So you also had written another novel in Cuba, which I read somewhere you decided not to publish ever, right? Because
I was 20 years old. That's
got it. So
but I finished a novel, like The Night Traveler is gonna be published. Right now it's going to, you know, I write in Spanish and I work really close with Nick Castor, he's one of the best translators, you know, from Isabel Allende, Pérez Reverte, all these big names. And he lives in London and the book is going to translation now at the end of the month.
oh, amazing. So there's another book.
Yeah.
Right. And I was going to, so you write in Spanish, right? And you use this.
I sometimes, for example, the first sentence, I thought the opening line in English because I always want to know how it's going to sound in Spanish and English. And I work really close with the translator. I always said that I am his nightmare. And,
Why?
you know, Nick is a diva. He's a very, you know, a great translator. And I remember when I finished The German Girl, my editor at that moment, he said, okay, we need to find the perfect translator. And then we sent 3 tests. And she sent it back to me with number 1, number 2, and number 3. And I said, Johanna, the only person who can translate this book is number 3. And she said to me, okay, we have a problem. He's the most expensive translator. The other, he has to choose you. He has to read the novel and he decide or not, he's gonna take the job. And then you have to work with her schedule. Maybe he's gonna say in a year, and the good thing, he read the book and he said that he's gonna translate all my books, and now he's my translator.
Oh, amazing! That's huge.
Huge. Our difference. I remember calling me one night saying, Armando, translate the title of this bolero. You know what it is from Cuba? It's like slow, and I said, okay, I know it doesn't have any sense, but that's the kind of song that I think is something like The Earring from the Moon, something like that. And I remember fighting all the time with the translation, but he's great. I think he's great.
So he probably doesn't consider you to be his biggest nightmare anymore, no?
No. He's very nice.
Very good. Awesome. Well, for me, my first question after I read the book is, why this subject matter? Why the St. Louis? It seems very evocative and it's so tragic, so I can see the appeal, but also very random in many ways. Yeah. So
I think the St. Louis was one of my obsession. I think since I was a child. I remember, I think around when I was like 10 years old, my grandmother, she's a daughter of a Spanish immigrant that they came to Cuba at the beginning of the 20th century. And she was pregnant with my mom when the boat arrived in Havana. And I remember her, you know, when I grew up during the 70s and 80s in Cuba, during dinner, my grandmother fighting with my grandfather saying Cuba is gonna pay very dearly because what they did to the Jewish refugee. And then, you know, for me, it was like a crazy and fighting. Batista was the responsible, and, you know, it was all the time who was the person behind that. And my grandfather, it was Roosevelt, no Batista, you know, American, they don't want more Jewish in Cuba. And when I went to college, I have access to the National Archive. And this is very hard in Cuba to get access to but you know, for my thesis, I have access. And I went to this librarian, she was an old lady, petite. And I said to her, you have something here about the St. Louis? And, you know, she whispering because in Cuba, everything is like complicated. And she said, okay, we used to have 3 boxes labeled with the St. Louis, and all of them disappeared during the 70s.
Oh, wow.
You know, I asked to my teacher, and when I came, you know, I arrived in Miami and working, I don't know if you remember doing search in this old computer that then you printing in this paper, and you have to have access to ACES. I don't know what is the name of the, and then I start reading everything related to the St. Louis, buying books, even in language that it was part of the obsession. And I remember when I published In Search of Emma, this editor from Simon & Schuster, and she's my friend in a way, and we have lunch in New York every month. she said to me, Armando, you have to write a novel. I love your book. And he said, okay, every writer has a novel in the travel. You know, everybody who love to write, they're gonna say, okay, I have this idea, but I'm not sure because I'm a journalist. I was thinking to do like a non-fiction book about the St. Louis with interviews with the survivors, historians. We're having lunch in New York in a Chinese restaurant in a big table with all my, you know, memorabilia and documents and pictures. And my editor said, okay, this is a novel. We're going to sign a contract. We're going to present it to Simon and Schuster. Sometimes the board from, you know, from the publishing house, it takes like 2 weeks to give me an answer, but you need to write. And, you know, I presented my first 10 pages and the last chapter. And next day, I have a contract with me without agent.
Wow. That's amazing.
It was a nightmare, but she wants the book in 6 months. And then I requested 2 years. And I was the back and forth. And she gave me the 2 years. And 2 years, she got the novel.
So how did you feel when she said it should be a novel? I mean, you were still thinking.
You know, the problem with the book, because I wrote it a lot, you know, different chapter, different, sometimes like it sounds like a column, you know. And when I have my daughter, everything changed. You know, I had Emma, you know, I can cry with you right now. I cry for everything, reading, writing, you know, my emotional connection with the story, it was completely different.
Ah, interesting.
And then Hannah started, you know, growing with Emma at the same time. At the beginning, that sentence it was, I'm gonna be, you know, almost 6 years old and decide to kill my parent. Then 7, 10. And when I finished the novel, it was 12 because Emma was 12.
Got it.
And then the problem with the book, and I remember during the editing process, my editor saying, she sounds too mature for the character. No, Hannah talked to, okay, this is a girl from the Second World War. They are different children. And you need to talk to my daughter. If you talk to my daughter, she talks like that. You know, because I think Hannah and Emma, they are the same. I think so.
That's so interesting. So I guess you know, you hear a lot about how parenthood can change your perspective when you begin to write again after you become a parent. And it seems to be especially true in this case. That's very, very cool.
For example, In Search of Emma, it was my first book. I presented in the Miami Book Fair. And I decided I'm never gonna read in front of the people because I always cry reading that book. I said, people think that I need therapy, you know, that I'm crazy. I don't know, you know, my children, they are, you know, they're amazing. Yeah.
And so historical fiction just dovetailed beautifully with that then, because it was originally supposed to be nonfiction. And so then you had all of this research and all of this material. So it just combined beautifully then.
And you know, the weird thing, I am a little weird. When I finished the book, when I gave the book, you know, for editing, I was ready for translation. Then I met the survivors. I never wanted to talk to them. And I took a plane. I went to Auschwitz. I went to Berlin. I run between point A to point B, taking the time to find the logical. I found the building where Leo lived, Hannah lived. You know, I trying to, because I have everything. I have all map from Berlin, but I need to feel that the timing and everything, it was perfect. And then May 13 at 8 p.m., I took a boat in Hamburg, you know, like a tourist boat around I was crying in front of everybody there. They thought I was drunk. And, but for finish the book, I always said it was completely different than the Dorestel. For the Dorestel, you know, I was writing, I went to Orador-sur-Glane in Limoges, you know, I did the search, the research, writing the book. With the German girl, it was completely different. Of course, I read everything related to the St. Louis, and then I started talking to the survivor. It was magical. I found this old lady she lived in Kew Gardens in Queens.
Mm.
She was 14 months old at the boat, and she was traveling with the mother, father, and grandfather. They sent them back to France, and they live in France. She learned French. She was small. She forgot the German, and then the Nazi arrived. They went to this provisional concentration camp, and one night the father took her to the woods. It was like this kind of camp where with a lot of Spaniard. It was controlled by the French policemen, not the Nazis. And then the father exchanged her for jewelry with a farmer. And then she never saw the parents again.
Wow. Amazing.
And when I went to her apartment, I remember this is the climax for my book, for my next book. I was writing about Orador Surglain, and I remember that. Yeah.
What other survivors did you meet?
Well, in Miami, there is one of the best. It's Herbert Galliner. He was 13 years old when he took the boat. And he said he has the same age like Fidel Castro when the boat arrived. And he was with his sister, brother, father, and mother. They went to France, and all of them, they were killed in Auschwitz. And the brother survived because they were minor, and they went to an orphanage, the non-occupied zone in France. And then after the war, they lost everything. And he started like a bakery guy. And then he moved to Connecticut. His dream, he was Miami. Because when the boat left Cuba, they stopped in Miami waiting for Roosevelt. And he said to his father, "Dad, I don't want to live in Cuba. I want to live in Miami." When he saw the skyline, and then his dream was living in Miami. He lived in Aventura in a penthouse. He's a happy guy because the woman from Kew Garden, she make you cry every time that you talk to her. She feel lost. She go with her daughter to the pharmacy, and she feel like someone is gonna abandon her. Even right now that she's like 82. Herbert is a happy guy, married with a beautiful woman with children, grandchildren. He's very old. He's over 90s now, right now. And then I met this is one of my favorite. By the way, all of them, they're my friends. When I presented the book in New York, they're with me. They're traveling with me in Canada too. And this woman, sometimes I said that social media sometimes is useful.
Yeah, for sure, for this, right?
A day like today, May 13, the boat, left Havana, whatever. And then a woman from Mexico, Sylvia, who was my friend during the 80s in Cuba, said, they call me Mandy. Mandy, I think my mother was on that boat. I said, Sylvia, give me the last name of your mother. I have the manifesto of the boat. I have all the names. Even I memorized all the names from the boat. And then Sylvia said, 2 days later, oh, Ana Maria Carmen. I said, okay, no, it was not your mother. It was your mother, your father, your uncle. You have the whole family there. And then, where is your mother? And then another 2 days. And she's in Toronto. I took a plane and I called her the Mexican of the St. Louis. This woman from Germany, a kind of Germany, she doesn't want to be called the German girl because this country belonged to Germany before to Czechoslovakia, and she speaks all these languages. They went back to Holland. In Holland, the father went to they went to Ravenburg, the mother and the daughter, and Buchenwald, it was the father. And they survived the war.
Wow.
And then the uncle, he is sterilized because he was Jewish, married to a German woman, and the only condition not to go to the concentration camp, it was a sterilization. And
Wow.
they got the permit, they went to Mexico, and then they reunite in Mexico. And she grew up in Mexico. She married to another Jewish guy, and they had the children. And now her son lives in Toronto. He's a professor there, and she's the Mexican of the St. Louis. She eats tacos. She speaks Spanish like a Mexican. She's very funny. She's in the 80s right now. She was 4 years old. And then presented the book in Miami. I found Eva Wiener, and Eva was the lucky one from the St. Louis. She said that because she was like 1 year old, and the father, when they decide which countries they want to receive it, most of the people, they prefer France because all these Jewish people from Germany, they speak French. It was the fashionable at that moment. And then the father of Eva said, I want a country separated by water for Germany. And then they went to England, and all of them, they survived. They live in New Jersey, and I have to present all my books in her synagogue, with all these old people. And it's really funny talking to them. Yeah.
Armando, we have a question from Glenna. Glenna, you can unmute if you want to ask Armando the question. I'm sorry, Armando. Go ahead. Did you have something else, Armando?
I forget something because you told me how many survivors. I remember last year, I think it was last year, with this pandemic, the time is crazy. I helped the Prime Minister in Canada. He did like kind of apology with the House of Commons. And then I helped them to find like 11 survivors. Yeah.
Wow.
It was people, all of them there. Yeah.
Glenna, you want to ask your question?
Sure, it's fine. I just went ahead and put it in the chat for when the appropriate moment, but I guess there's no time like the present. Armando, if I may call you by your first name, I know this is the first time we've met, but if I may take that liberty. As you were talking about your daughter, I was wondering then, you as a writer and finding her voice, was your daughter the inspiration behind the narrator of Hannah, or maybe even Anna? I don't know if you can address that question in terms of finding those voices and your experience as a parent and having a young daughter.
I think, I don't know if any of you, they are writer too, but when you write, even you are writing a historical novel, you are writing about yourself. It's your, everything is you in the book. And even I am not Jew. I am not, my family, they don't have anything to do with the Holocaust. But I think Anna and Hannah is Emma. It's the voice of Emma. Even Anna go to Fieldstone, and my daughter was on Fieldstone at that moment. And the apartment of Anna in New York is my apartment. That's crazy because all the apartment, when the character live in New York, in my mind is my apartment. And I have to change the address because everybody thought, oh my God, all the characters live in the same building in Morningside Heights in Manhattan. And Alma, the old lady in Cuba, you remember I mentioned it. My grandmother said Cuba is going to pay very dearly because what they did to the Jewish refugees. That's my grandmother. And all the anecdote, she was with the long hair and dying and driving is the story that my grandmother told me about her mother dying in Cuba. And after Castro, they never wanted to leave the country. Even when I left in 1991, my mother waited until my grandmother died to leave the country because she always said that she wanted her, her body, I don't know, be in the air in the cemetery, and they're gonna pay because of what they did. That's my grandmother talking, in this case, about Fidel Castro. I am not, banalizing Hitler, but, this is my story. I'm trying to put more realistic in having my experience.
And what about the setting in Cuba, in Havana, the house, the neighborhood, was that also?
My house, all the houses, the house in Vedado is my house. And I have that t-shirt. I remember when I finished elementary school, I have to go to middle school. In Cuba, you have to study Russian. And my grandmother said, Russian? You don't need Russian, you need to study English. And she sent me to these classes. She paid 25 pesos. It was a fortune per class. It was Monday, Wednesdays, and Friday. 1 hour with this old guy. He was a German guy, tall, with blue eye, screaming all the time, and waiting for me outside. And with all this old book in the porch of the house. And, Tommy's a boy, the classical, lesson, and I hate him. And we call him a Nazi. That's the reason I use this story in the book. And my grandmother always sent me with a bag with food, because food was scarce at that moment, helping this old guy living by himself. When I went to college, my best friend, this is the first time that I met a Jewish person, and his name is Aaron Jelin Rosenweis. So more Jewish is impossible, like, having that name in Cuba. And he told me about Judaism, and he told me, oh, you used to live in, in this address. Oh, my mother visited this German professor, and he was a Jew. So I try to mix all this story, and it's my story, but at the same time, it's completely fiction. Yeah.
And what made you decide to do that structure, which I thought worked very well, of the bifurcated structure, but in the end, there's this deep connection that comes together?
I studied theater, and then for me, every time that I conceive a chapter, it's like a piece of theater. It's a drama, and I want a climax in every action. Editor, they're lazy. I love editor. I'm an editor myself, but and I'm fighting all the time with them because, and I think that the German girl is always going to be the German girl. But it was all the books that were bestseller at that moment. They have a girl inside, and they prefer to have like a a linear story. But in my mind, I wanted Anna is like revealing a secret of Hannah. Is I tell the story in a one line, it's boring, I think. And for me, Anna is at the moment that you think about it, And at the same time, I decided to put Anna because for my daughter, the Holocaust is like for us, the Egyptians, it's like 3,000 years ago. And then with Anna, I have the story of the September 11th that for her is now, And I explained to her, okay, the Holocaust happened the last century. It's nothing, we have survivors. And it's happening in the middle of the most civilized continent in the world. It's not happening in our countries. It's happening in Germany, where the culture and the smart people live. Then it can happen now. And then I use the September 11th drama. By the way, my fiction book, it was that story. But I work like a puzzle, like trying to mix everything. And I read an article in the New York Times immediately after September 11th about this woman living in Connecticut, in a small town. She was the mayor there. And the husband, a Tuesday in the morning, left the house to the Metro North, to the subway in Grand Central, and never come back. It was September 11th. And then she, for years, to get the insurance, the life insurance, because the guy, and by the way, he was a Cuban. And the guy never, he worked like a 10 blocks from the Twin Tower. And then you have to, there was no proof of DNA, nothing. And she received the life insurance like 5 years later. In my case, I did it the other way, She doesn't want the money until you show me he's dead. It was, she never wanted to accept that the guy was dead. And then I was building this story, and I need to find the past of this Cuban, and then the past, it was the San Luis. That's the, and then I have all this chapter about the San Luis written already, and I was building the character with my daughter, And then, my daughter read the book when she was 13, I think, when it was translated. She, she speaks Spanish, but she's better reading in English. And it was, I remember when I have the reviewer for the New York Times with the book, I'm waiting without sleeping. It was like a nightmare. It was the worst waiting for my daughter. And she's a fast reader. And the only thing that she said is, why they did this to these people? For her, they look like everybody, It was hard for her to understand what happened to these people.
I liked also how you kind of kept us guessing, because for a while, was a puzzle. It's like, okay, now Anna's father is who exactly, and it took a while, and then when it clicked, it was like, wow, okay, I get it now. This is amazing. Like, you know, it was that connection.
I think you need, you know, because right now I am in the editing process for The Night Traveler. Editor, when I read a book, I love the ghost. I love to create the past of character that sometimes I don't have the answer, you know. I don't.
Right.
At the same time, I love to have the atmosphere of the scene. No? And you don't know how many hours and days I spent studying the wallpaper for this family. Because, you know, this is a German family. They're rich. They are intellectual at the same time. They read. Where they buy the clothes. How is the luggage? I have folders with all the image, all the clothes of Alma. And I didn't want to use the Coco Chanel typical, you know, I want the kind of clothes it's Jewish German they buy, the perfume. I have all the detail, and maybe I mentioned in a simple detail. I think the perfume, I didn't want to put the name, but I used the ingredient, I think. And I mentioned it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
and I read in an interview of yours that you're very captured by scent, right? By perfumes. You collect perfume bottles, you love scent. And I love that because there were many moments, like, you know, kind of Proustian moments with smell, right? That you think
your
about.
first memory is smell. You think about it. Sometimes you remember something because of the smell, or something you transport to another. I remember in the Cuba, because you know, all the story about in Cuba is like Miami, and then everybody needs the you know, protecting the sun and the tall. You know, everybody used, all the children, they were installed the Johnson and Johnson tall, yeah, and the violets. I remember my grandmother put a lot of violet in our body to refresh at the same time.
You're talking about agua de violeta, no?
Agua de violetas, yeah. I have it, by the way. I still have agua de violeta. And my editor said, oh my God, this is, you know, too much smell here. We need to cut a little about the violeta. I remember that.
Enough with the violetas, right?
Lisette, we have Stephanie Rosen wants to ask a question.
Yes, please.
So Stephanie, go ahead.
Okay. Hi, ladies. Hi, Armando. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. So first, I wanted to tell you, I really enjoyed the book a lot. My father is a Holocaust survivor, born in Berlin in 1932. And so I made it my, you know, adult life's work to learn a lot about the Holocaust. I've actually met Harb Carliner. I brought him in to speak at my children's school several times. He's a lovely man. I probably know some of the other survivors you know. So I had a couple of questions for you. First, I really want to commend you because I feel like I read a statistic that says that, you know, the children of today, I think it was generous to say that, you know, your daughter and maybe her generation thinks of this as Egypt. If they know, you know, I hear that people are not even aware and that the Holocaust deniers, I mean, maybe they're making headway. So, I mean, I hate to say that, but I think it's possible, especially in the environment we live in. So maybe you could speak to that. And then I commend you even further because I was just looking, I'm sorry I joined late, but I saw that you're writing 2 more books, or you have one that's out and a 3rd one, and all, you know, with the same subject. And I'm curious what kind of reception you've received. If it's, you know, have you gotten anything negative? I hope not, because I think, well, but I'm curious, you know, I mean, again, to the point of like the denial that maybe this is fiction, this is, you know, and I'm also curious if anybody is approaching you about doing a movie.
Okay, I'm going to start with the movie, the last one. Okay. Since the beginning, I remember Antomopoulos. She's the producer of Rome, Band of Brothers, you know, Versailles, yeah. And she loved the book. And she started trying to get money from it. The story with the German girl is funny because the book was a bestseller first in Australia, then in Canada, then in United States, and then in Germany, Sweden, and Colombia. That's and for me, the most impressive one is Sweden. In Sweden, to have an idea, there are more Cuban than Swedish people. You know, Cuban there are 11, in Sweden there are 10. And I think the first year they sold over 100,000 copies. So it was like then this producer want to get money from there to do like a big production. Then she got divorced. It was a nightmare for her. Then I found another producer. Then he went with me to Santo Domingo to do the presentation because they have there a studio, like a big a studio with a tank with the water, and they film a lot of films with boats there. And then he said that it's a $30 million to do the producer. But now we have the book option in contract now. And whatever I say here, stay here, because until you don't have all the paper, it's back and forth for the rights and everything. But this is a Hollywood production. They want to do a movie or a series, and they want to buy the other two books too. And then my agent want only one book. It has to be one-on-one, because if you sell the 3 books, you can be attached to them for 10 years or more without producing anything. But I'm lucky with that. And with the book, and I remember when I was talking to my editor, when you have to present to the P&L and everything around the book, and the first question is, in United States, American, they don't read translation. I don't know if you know that only 2% of the books sold in United States, they are translation. And they were worried about that in mass licensing. They wanted to put A. Lucas to avoid the Hispanic part. And because I don't live because of the book, I have my salary and my job. For me, this is a pleasure. I said, no, this is my book. This is my name. I'm going to keep it that way. And it was a big surprise for them that the book, they knew that it's going to work in New York, for example, but they didn't know that it's going to be a bestseller in Colombia. You know what is the reason it was a bestseller in Colombia? Because the book in United, to sell my book for young adult, you have to pass like a ton of rules before going there. With the first sentence, never that book is going to be accepted like a young adult. And in Colombia, the book club like this one is with 11 years old kids. And all the time I go into theater with tons of children,
Wow, that's so interesting.
I have been in all the book fairs in Barranquilla, Bogotá, all the different cities, many times a year. Colombia is a big surprise, more than Spain, compared with the population. And I'm talking too much. I don't know exactly.
No.
The criticism of the book. Everybody thought in the Simon & Schuster that because I am not Jewish, the book is going to be a problem.
Yeah, that's true.
But I think because the board of the Holocaust Museum in Washington, D.C., this is the Memorial Holocaust Museum in D.C., they have the biggest collection of the St. Louis. They have the original hat of the captain. Most of the survivors donated all the things there. And I spent days with all the original documents, reading and studying and looking at the clothes of the picture. And I had the support of them. And then the survivors, all of them, they wrote about the book and they went to the presentation. And in Australia, when it was my first book presentation, because it was the first country, it was a bestseller, and I spent 2 weeks there. It was interesting because everybody was asking the same question. They read the book in a way that I never thought it's gonna be. It was the same moment when the Syrian, you remember the million of Syrians walking around Europe trying to find a refugee. And they said, because I am a Cuban, and I don't know what connection they feel that Cuba, Syria has, nothing. And I wrote that book because of the Syrian people, that they're trying to find I said, okay, this book has been, I have been writing this book for more than 10 years. It was finished. You see the book right now. I finished the book 2 years ago. For example, I finished The Night Traveler. It's going to be out in 2022. It takes years to publish a book. At that moment, when I presented the book for translation, there was nothing on the news about the Syrian. But I understand. And then I realized that my 3 books, they have to be around the fear that we have of the other one. I think this is, and I'm including in this, because we're always afraid of the people who has an accent or have a different skin color or different sexual orientation or believe in a different God. For children to be married to people like us. We want to live with, in Manhattan, like it's Manhattan, in the co-op, if there are someone different trying to buy an apartment, it's a problem. And I remember we bought the apartment when the twins, they were 6 months old, and we got the interview. You have to go in the co-op to an interview with all the members of it's a small building, and with the president of the board, you have to put a suit and be the more prepared with all the information of your life, bank account, letters, everything. And we became the first Hispanic family buying in a co-op building from 1905. Even the super, it was Irish. And then the question, it was crazy. It was what kind of music you listen, how many parties you have every week. It said, okay, they thought that we were Carmen Miranda, and because I don't know. And then with 3 children, 2 of them 6 months old, what kind of party you can have? And
bring out the congas,
And I remember my partner became member of the board, and then we received all the email from the board when they were interviewing another couple, with a French last name. And then the president of the board saying, the wife, she's a dentist, and the husband, he's very nice. All the time it was like that. The wife, they're gonna have money from the parents, and they're gonna pay full the apartment, and the husband is very nice. It was the first Black guy living in that building. So we're always afraid of the other one. And at the end, I think that's the problem with the German girl. That happened because, this German Jewish from Berlin, 1939, that it was another problem. I remember talking to this Jewish center in different city, that they felt that because they were white, blonde, blue eyes, rich, they can survive Hitler. And they wait until the last minute when there were no visa around the world. And that's the problem. Most of the people, not all of them. Then if you talk to Ana Maria Harman, she said, I hated all this. Hitler only allowed 10 Reichsmark per person, but you can bring all the jewelry, clothes, and whatever you want to bring. And what is the reason there is a lot of pictures of the St. Louis? Because everybody has a Leica, the camera. It was the most famous camera at the moment. And they thought bringing the camera because in Cuba, it was a transit country, to the United States, they can sell it and have the money back. And that's the reason, the Holocaust Museum have like a Leica from the St. Louis, and we have pictures of all the family that they were in the boat. And then it's because, Hitler was afraid of the other one, the people who looks different, who have a different God. And it's the same issue with the Doristel. I think when I was writing the book and then I travel, it's the same story. And I try in my 3 books, I'm trying to rescue some part of the history that we prefer to forget. And it's simple. What is the reason that for the St. Louis, we have to wait until 2008 that President Obama did the apology at the Congress? 2008. And it was in 2011, I think, that they built something in Canada. And last year, the Prime Minister did the apology. So we're still waiting for Cuba. But why? Because it was only the Nazi. It was Cuba, United States, and Canada. They denied the entrance of these people. And in the Doristel, in Orador Suplén, that one beautiful Saturday, in this beautiful part of France, the Nazi arrived. They put over 600 women and children inside the church, and they burned them alive. Okay, and they destroyed the whole. What is the reason that you go to Limoges and nobody knows what is Orador sur Glane? Or you talk to my editor in France and they didn't know about this story because it was the Nazi with the help of the French gendarmes. So I did that. And when with the night traveler trying to rescue another part of the history, and this is a woman. She's German. She's not Jewish, and they live at night. It's called the night traveler. They run in the middle of the park at night. All the life is at night because at night everybody has the same color. And she's a poet, and she needs to find at 7 years old. If you look different, when I'm talking about different, is the black German. You know, Hitler killed 60,000 black Germans, and this is part of the history that everybody forgot. And the Michelin. You are the daughter of a white woman and a black German. If you are a girl at 7 years old, you have to be sterilized or go to a concentration camp. And the boys too. The boys, it was easy, vasectomy. The girls, it was X-ray. And all this law, it's called the Nuremberg law, Hitler created with the inspiration of the study of the two doctors from Pasadena, California, that they create this theory of the perfect race and evolution and the brain. And they started with the schizophrenia and then with the Michelin. And the inspiration, it was the book. And here in United States, until 1960, that they still sterilize people because they have problem in their mind or in the body, or they, until 1966, I think, they killed over 100,000 people. And then you never talk about that.
Yeah. It's amazing. And so ultimately, like, you know, you say, and of course it's obvious that Cuba and the other countries, but let's stick with Cuba for a second now, turned away because of this concept of the other. They are different from us. But what did your research also turn up that there were perhaps political reasons why this might have been a wiser move, or were there other reasons other than just they are different than we are?
You said like, what happened with the people in the St. Louis.
Yeah. Yes.
You know, I read all the, this mandatory, no? I have all the communication between the Department of State and the government of Cuba. You know, everything that they talk, that the facts, telex they send, they have to be recorded. And then I have the book with all the communication. And of course, it was Laredo Group who signed the decree that with the number of the passenger, 937, saying that we're not allowed to disembark. Batista was the chief of the army, and with the director of immigration, they keep the $175 that all these people pay for the ticket. Then Laredo Group said, no, I need another $500 per passenger if you want to disembark in Havana. But if you see all the communication between them, Roosevelt, they, you know, thinking about it, it was a big crisis in the United States. The xenophobe, it was, you know, terrible in Cuba too. My grandmother told me that I think it was like a couple of years before the St. Louis, it was a big protest in Cuba with over 40,000 people with the theme of Cuba for Cubans. You know, if you remember, my grandparents, they are Spaniards. And if you talk to all these, the Holocaust Museum, and you go to the Roosevelt Museum, because I went and checked all the documents, Roosevelt always said that they never send it back to Germany. And that's not true. When they say no, and they were in the coast, close to Miami, it was in the middle of the ocean that this committee find refugee in France, Belgium, Holland, and England for these people. When Roosevelt said no and Canada said no, they went going back to Germany. It was in the middle of the ocean, close to this Portuguese island that they found and they accepted. Of course, they have to pay money, not $500. To have an idea, the committee only have $2 million, and it's not like they have the whole cash in the bank. It's the promise from different families to help, I don't know, 6 million of Jewish live in Europe. They can spend the whole money, the $2 million, in 900 people only.
Awesome. Does anybody have other questions, or I can keep asking more if Stephanie?
Well, I was curious though, because I asked you earlier if you'd received like negative, and I didn't mean negative regarding your incredible writing, but what about, like white supremacists or anybody reaching out like that, or do they not read?
No, not really. No, not really. I don't know, because when I do presentations in book fair, the people that are really nice on the group of Jewish too, but I never have that kind of reaction, I think. Yeah.
But it's interesting you mentioned in France how they're not aware of
Well,
what went.
France, I always fight with my German editor and my French editor. With the German editor, if another, I think it's constantly, and they change the title. It's easy, and I think it's easy for their mind to think that Hitler killed, the Jewish. Everybody knew that Hitler killed over 6 million Jewish. Okay, but then it's hard to say they kill his own people, and they never gonna accept that, because all this family, they are Jewish, but they were German, and they feel they were German for different generations, and they live there, but they never want to accept that. They fight and didn't want to have the German girl as a title. And it was my idea that I need to know them, that she was Jewish, but she was German, and he killed his own people. No? That's at the end, the thesis of the book. And they fight, and they put the heritage of the Rosenthal. They want the last name, tell that they were Jewish. And it happened the same. Okay, maybe because the German girl is the name of this magazine, and this magazine is Nazi, it's illegal to have a title of the Nazi or something in a book. Okay, I accepted that. And then with the daughter's tale, they didn't want to put the daughter's tale. They want to put the last name again. And it's the lost daughter of the last name of the character. And I said, okay, this is your problem. You know your audience. This is your marketing. But every time that I go and present it, I said the story. That's the problem with the German editor. And with the French, I love my French editor. They decided to put the passenger of the St. Louis, because they hate German and they don't want the word German in the book, and nobody buy a book with the word German. Okay, I understand that. And then the second part, they scared of everything related to the Holocaust, because they were part of it. And then we have to wait. It was the last country who was France, the last country. And with the Doristel, because the Doristel is worse. It's about orador suppléant, and they're very sensitive, and they're very careful when they present them to the French people. So that's the kind of thing that I have to deal. And I think it's only with them. With the rest, they're friendly. I think so. But it's their tragedy.
Armando, tell us a little bit about your writing schedule and your writing discipline when it comes to actually cranking this out and carving the time to actually do it amidst all the things that you do.
For the German girl, it was crazy, because I didn't know that I can finish the book. And I have another thing. I am my first editor. I think we closed the German girl with over 120,000 words, but I wrote, I think, close to 300,000.
Oh.
And I prefer to cut myself personally. And I wrote time between 9 p.m. to 1 to 2 a.m. in the morning. I slept a couple of hours, wake up at 7, and I was responsible to prepare Emma and Gonzalo, the twins. And it was crazy. And I remember I finished writing every night, think, oh my God, this is trash. Nothing's gonna have any value for this story. And then the next morning, I always edited between 8:30 to 10:30, my first edit meeting. And then I love whatever I wrote the last night. Then it was the whole process. During the weekend, I tried to get one day for the family and the other day writing. And usually I never accept more than one trip a month. Only I think one or two dinners with business because of the family. With the writing the German girl, I accepted all the trip mainly to Los Angeles, because I ride in a plane. I have 2 days in a hotel by myself. I have a couple of meetings of the photo shoot and I can write. It was very intense. With the daughter Estelle, because I have like 4 years, it was easier. I think because I write, I think mainly during the weekend, and I think I finished the book in this house. I bought the house at that moment. And part of the goal I have that I never is like a 500 words per day. If I, for example, today I'm not gonna write, but I know that during the weekend I have to produce over 10,000 words maybe. Because the story is in my mind. Last night I did a lot of research for the book that I'm writing now. And I always, working. My mind never stopped, I think. And I writing on the computer, and I write in a black book, and over the phone in notes, everything is connected. I have, at night, I write a lot on the telephone.
I think April has a question. April, do you want to ask your question?
Yeah.
What is April?
Okay, but okay, that's okay. Better, I got it.
There she is.
What happened with Anna and her mom afterwards when they returned to New York? Was her mom still like holed up in depression? Did she go out? Was she seemed fine in Cuba? But I was so curious what happened to her because I really loved her.
You said the Alma, the Hannah's mother or Anna's mother?
No, what happened to Anna and her mom, the young girl? What became of them?
So Anna and Aida or Hannah and Alma?
Anna and
Aida, okay.
the ones that live in New York.
Yeah,
I didn't remember her name, sorry.
I think he said Tojito, she's my friend, and she's one of she reads my book when they're draft. And I remember her saying that because my family, there are two dads, I always portray the mothers like a weak. Oh, I said, I don't think so. I think all the characters in my book, they are women, because I grew up with my mother, my grandmother, my sister. My mother left my father with me with 2 years and a half, and my daughter, she was like a newborn because she wanted to be an engineering. It was during the 60s, and my father said the engineering it's only me, no you. You have to take care of the children, and they get a divorce, and said you don't need to pay any money. And that kind of a strong woman. And my grandmother saying Cuba is going to pay very dearly. You can say that to a child, who live in Cuba. And I think all these mothers, they are strong in a way. But I want to have all this drama around Aida. I don't know why I create all this story, but when I finished the book, went to translation, it was to print. I was writing the final chapter of the daughter Estelle. And then I decided to change everything. And then because the book, they are independent, the three of them, but there is a connection. It's a slightly connection with the three books. And then I remember that I gave to Anna the box from Viera, and then they took a plane with Aida, and Aida opened the book, The Daughter Estelle.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
And then, in the way, I think Aida, and I leave it to you, for me, Aida have a new life when she saw what happened with the family, and you need the past to be yourself sometimes,
Right. For me though, Alma was scary. Like I did not like Alma. I was like, this is horrible.
I love Alma because Alma is the kind of she's beautiful. She's like Greta Garbo, and then you have to lose everything. That's hard.
Right.
And then you have to start in a new country. Can you imagine this rich woman from Germany living in Havana?
Right.
The sun, this noises, and then losing everything with the revolution again.
Right.
It's
But she
crazy.
was so stubborn. Why did she have to be so stubborn? You know, it was hard for her.
You know, my mother said that this book, I wrote the book against my grandmother. You know, she knows that all my family has a character in the book. And I did it because, you know, when you have, if you go here, when I producing, this is like a puzzle. I have different chapter. I move the chapter here, all the paper in the floor. I bought this table that is like over 12 feet. It's a huge table because I need to put everything here. And I always thinking about this woman. I feel really bad because it was my grandmother. But at the end, I feel, I don't know, I like her.
You like her. That's interesting. I was scared of her. I was
I don't like, because in my case, I know, you know, depression is not an option.
right.
So for me, I know this is chemical. I know you can be sick. It's like when you said as a writer you have a block, you can't write. That's not happened to me. It's simple. Right. I need the time to write. I think you have a block when you have your life easier. You don't have anything to do. Okay, maybe, because if I have a minute, I'm writing. So my mind is running faster than my hand and my time. And then for the people you want, you know, it's the same. I think my partner is gonna kill me. He's not here. He's in Manhattan with Emma. And he's more that he has the luxury to be depressed or tired. Or say, I have to produce. I have to, you know, work for the family. You know, even how I feel, I never took a sickness day in over 20 years in People in Espanol. Never.
What? Wow, that's amazing. Yeah.
You know, it's my kind of person. At the same time, if I have a problem, my problem, you know, it's like let's say 1 hour. I can discuss with my partner, and that's it. I can leave, I can sleep. He can get in bed for 3 months. You know, it needs process, and I think that's a problem. You know, the problem, you move on. I know it's hard. No? I don't want to sound like harsh to Ida. No?
Right. Well, Glenna has a question too. Her question is about, can you speak to the theme of loss in general? And I think you touched on this with Alma, right? The loss that she experiences, but in general, the theme of loss in your novel. And also, how does it relate to your own loss in a way? Yeah. I don't know if it's relevant or not, but perhaps.
Then I always said, and I think the first time that I said was in Australia, that I am a refugee. You know, I left my country when I was, I think, 28. I have a career. I went to college. I have a very limited English, even now. And then I have to start from zero, like everybody, you know, who came from our country, in Miami. And I was lucky. I started writing like a freelancer at the Herald. And then this anecdote is the opening scene for the Daughter's Tale. And it's simple. I remember I won all my books from Cuba. And during the 90s, it was really hard, the communication. You remember, right now you can travel, you can call. It's difficult, but it's easier. During the 90s, you have to call via Canada to talk to your parents, and it was very expensive. And then there was not a lot of flight. You have to fly via Jamaica. And then my grandmother, I talked to her, and she said, a woman from the neighborhood is going to Miami. And she said, because I always said, send it all my books, all the books that you want. Okay, she said she can bring only one book. And I have to choose that night which book my grandmother is gonna send. And I always think, okay, the bigger one, no, the one that I want, it was like a nightmare. And then I built the whole story. This bookstore owner, I think it's the Garden of Letters, and in Berlin, she has to choose one book before the burning of the book.
Yeah.
And then I built the whole story about that book. And then, you know, it's my story at the same time. You know,
I'm always intrigued by that. Because the same with my parents and my brother and my sister, they left Cuba in '61. And I've always been very captivated by that idea of choosing what you bring because they could bring very little, right? And I don't know. That was so. It's funny you touched on that because I always find it incredibly intriguing, and I'll never forget. And I think I wrote about this for Tropic Magazine, just a little thing. I always felt very left out in a way from my family because I was born here in 1964. I was the only one who was born here, and I felt like I had, even though it was a horrible. There was so much tragedy. There was so much stress. There were so many bad things, but it was also in a way my childish and childlike mind was an adventure, right? That I wasn't part of this epic adventure my family had taken part in. And I remember whenever my brother is to this day obsessed with photographs, even before the phone era when everybody's obsessed with photographs, you know, because there were so few photographs that they had of their time growing up. They just had a few. And so they would always pour over them and look at them again and again and again. And he kept a little shoebox from the Red Cross and he would bring out every little item. And it just struck me so much that these small little mementos just meant so much to him. And we don't even appreciate all of the mementos that we have. We get rid of them, you know? And this idea of what you choose to bring with you is so important.
Yeah, and every family is different. My sister is completely different. My mother even, she doesn't care about pictures. I have all the picture from the family. I have it because they don't care. They say, now they're mine because I was the one who preserved them, who asked for them. I have for my great grandparents all the pictures, and always obsessed with that. Even my mother knew about the St. Louis because my grandmother never had like an impact for her. Everybody remembers German professor because I went to the German professor, but you know, and they were discovering the story of the family via the Rosenthal. I remember that with my mother. My mother is a great reader. She's my first reader. She's like my copy editor in Spanish. Yeah.
Great, amazing.
In Miami.
Well, does anybody else have any other questions? If not,
it's like a less than a minute, but I have an image, a video from the sun. See it? You want to share it? Yeah.
Sure. Wait, and there's one more question before we get to that, Armando. How about the character of Leo? Is that Lillian asking? That says Gutierrez there. It might be Lillian. How about the character of Leo, which she loved, and how his eyelashes arrived before him? I also love that. Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit about that character?
You know, Leo is, I love Leo and building Leo because he was like a normal Jewish guy from Berlin. You know, the other one, they were rich, but this was like a real guy. I think it's more real than Hannah. And building the story with the capsules. And my favorite in the whole book is the idea that Hannah had of what happened of Leo. It's an illusion because nobody knew or knows what happened with this guy. No? And then I remember writing the scene of this father with this small boy in the small room in the boat, and I never forget what happened because, you know, I was writing and of course crying in my apartment in Miami Beach. And then my son has like a 2 or 3 years old, and he called me, Papa hice caca. He was in the restroom. And then I went to the restroom and he saw me crying. And, you know, he said, I didn't do anything, believe me. He said, no, don't worry, it was not you. And I always gonna, you know, never gonna forget the moment I was writing that scene. But I think Leo is the kind of character that I love when I'm reading, that it has a story, you present it, and you have to build it and finish it by yourself. You know, sometimes I think I playing too much with this, because with the daughter's tale, my favorite character is Danielle, and I leave it to you. I don't know what happened to her. And then every letter that I've received is what happened to Danielle. And people think that The Night Traveler is about Danielle, and nothing. I think Lisette is gonna write about Danielle.
Maybe one day, yes. And there's another question too about who was culpable in Cuba. You mentioned the president at the time. You mentioned whoever was in charge of the, I guess, the equivalent of the foreign papers, and then you mentioned Batista. Your research showed that there was a debate about who was more culpable than the other. What kind of research did you do on that, and what was there ultimately more culpability on the part of like the president of Cuba at the time, whose name I can't remember now?
At the end, who signed the decree, it was the president of Cuba, Laredo Group. You know, Batista, he was a great politician. He was the president and a dictator later. And my third book, I covering that part from the other side, from the side of Batista. And I study a lot about him because I was doing the German. And all the documents from the Roosevelt government, they said that they sent someone from Washington, D.C. to meet Batista and the doctor the same day that the boat arrived in May 27. Batista decided that he was sick with cold and he was on bed. The day he woke up, is the story of the doctor. He was,
and that was documented. You said, was that?
I have all the because I have another writer, a friend in Paris, Zoe Valdez. He was writing about Batista. When he read that, I copy and send it all the documents saying that. Yeah. And Batista, the June 2nd, he was fine. The boat left, and then he was like a Poncio Pilato. He was very smart because at the end he helped the Jewish people after the war. He received a lot of Jewish. It was a big Jewish community in Cuba.
Right, and he was supportive of the community.
But at the end, everybody knows that Batista, Manuel Benitez, they kept the money, and Laredo grew. He wanted part of the money. And then the other option was Dominican Republic, and this is another racist thing, because the dictator at that moment in Dominican Republic, they wanted all the Jewish people that they can receive if they pay the $500 because they clean the race in Dominican Republic. They want more white people. And then they receive a lot of Jewish people. And it's fine because if they save their life, whatever was the reason, who cares?
Right, right. How big was the Jewish community in Cuba?
In Cuba, during the 30s, it was like a 40,000. It was going to 60 after the war, 70. And right now it's only 2,000. I went to Cuba. I was not allowed to go to Cuba because I was working at the Herald, and they denied the visa all the time. And when the first boat who visited Cuba went to Cuba, I was with the Cuba team at the Herald, and they returned me in the same plane from Havana. And then I disconnect from Cuba. I am a bad Cuban, I always said that. And that's the reason I moved to New York. I left the Herald because Cuba, it was too much for me. And I need to leave. I said, I don't want to be depressed. And then Publisher Weekly, this is a publication for trade for the book industry. They create, during Obama, when they opened the relationship, they create the first American delegation of editors and publishers visiting Cuba during the book fair in Havana. And because I was the editor of People in Espanol and my publisher, they invite me. But I was the only Cuban. And I said, okay, I'm happy to go. My company's gonna pay for the trip. But I need a Cuban, I am American citizen, but I need a Cuban passport. I need a permit of disembark, because I'm Cuban. You don't need anything. And they processed and they gave me the permit. And it was my first visit to Cuba after many years. And it was magical for me because I was finished the book. And I remember my editor said, you have to go because they are the most important people for the industry, bookstore owner. And then I found, we call the godmother of my books. It's Annie Philbrick. She's the owner of many bookstores in the Massachusetts, New York, Connecticut area. And she read I sit with her in the first restaurant that we went, and I talked about my book. I gave a postcard that my editor said, and she called, I don't know how, to the marketing director in Simon & Schuster, and she said that she needs to read the book before everybody.
Oh, wow.
And then she did all the tours with me, the pre-book tour that you have to do with the bookstore. She did it with me in the East Coast and organic side for me for the West Coast. And then I went to I visited the small Holocaust museum that they have in Havana, in a synagogue, with this woman, is Mayra Levy, and she's the classic, she's Jewish, no? But she's the classic Cuban who talk like with all the hands, and she fight for more than 10 years with the government and the Department of Religion and the party to get back the synagogue who belonged to her grandfather. And then they were allowed to have the synagogue. To have an idea, in Cuba, they don't have rabbi. They have to import rabbi during the holiday. And then with the condition, it's not religion, it's only about culture and tradition. They can't celebrate nothing religious. And then she fight another 5 years to open the Holocaust Museum. And one of my friends told me that they got the permission because she told the government with the condition that Cuba always helped the Jewish community. And then she put everything, Spielberg donated, you know, he interviewed the people with the videos and the monitors, and they have all this, and they put the picture of the St. Louis in one corner without any caption. When I met her, I said, the next year I'm coming with the same delegation, and I'm gonna donate 100 books. You know, I talked to my editor.
Right.
And most of the memorabilia that I have from the St. Louis, because Cuba is part of the tragedy.
Right, exactly.
We have to present the book here. We're gonna organize the presentation. We're gonna invite the ambassadors and everybody. Okay, we arrived to Cuba. At the moment that we arrived, in the book fair, the stand for United States, it was empty. All the book, they were retained a costume.
Oh, wow.
My Cuban paranoia, I said, oh my God, this is for the German girl. And then the guy said, no, mañana, tomorrow, this is gonna be resolved. Tomorrow is Sunday. I said to everybody, nothing is gonna be resolved Sunday. Then Monday, they got the books back, but not the German girl.
Oh, wow.
That I cannot present the German girl. Then
Wow, that's so interesting.
I talked to Mayra. I said, Mayra, I'm leaving, you know, in 2 days. You live here. I don't want to. This is a donation. I can give everything to you. I don't have to do the present. No, Armando, you are going to be here. You're going to present the book. I don't care. Nobody called me. Then the next day I arrived with all the American delegation. They invited over 300 people at the synagogue, and she was pale. And she said, they called you. Yeah, they called me. They said that you need a religious visa to do the presentation. I explained that you are not a religious person, that you are doing a donation, and we're going to do it. If they want to cancel, they have to bring the police and close the door. And then I opened the door, all the police in regular clothes, sitting inside like a 20. Before open the door, they were inside. She didn't know how they get inside. Wow. And then I did the presentation in panic. I have a PowerPoint with all my collection, the video that I'm going to show you. And I said, I am not a rabbi. I am not a religious person. I'm donating everything because it's Cuba. It's part of the tragedy you have to have. And they spent, like, it was a fortune for them, like a $300 building, like the cabinet with glass for the collection. It was beautiful, but it was a trauma. And my mother calling me, don't be by yourself. They can put drug in your bag. They're crazy people. And then the next day when we left the country, I said, the first one who's going to pass custom is going to be me, and you're going to wait until I pass. And I did it, and it was fine. And I said, I'm never coming back. And I stopped my relationship again. Yeah. Guy, the Mayra is sending me email, please donate more things.
Right. And is it still there, the cabinet inside the synagogue?
I did another presentation, and they saw all everything, but they don't have my name. And the 100 book, they never gave back the 100 book to my editor. Yeah. And in the book fair, it was the Mexico stand. And then my editor said, go there because I think they have the German girl in Spanish. Yeah. And then when they sold only one, they have 29 books. And I felt like a thief with my cousin with 2 plastic bags running with the books. And they have it there in the library.
Wow, that's a great story. Well, we're totally ready for the video now.
Okay, let me know if I can know how to do it. I'm going to the desktop, no?
Yamil is our tech guru. Yamil, he wants to show a video.
Okay, let me.
You're allowed to.
Okay.
Oh, there we go.
I close here. This is the, there's no sound in this one. You can see
Okay.
it?
Yes. Wow. Is that leaving Germany or arriving in Havana?
Arriving in Havana. This is May 27. This is the government with the votes, with the committee. I always think that my grandmother is there because she was there officially. Yeah. And I have this another small one, but you can meet Ana Maria. She did this trade, was out.
It was okay until the Germans came in. It's very hard to be a refugee and an immigrant anywhere you go. I'm glad that Armando wrote this book because people tend to forget. And we should not forget the mistakes of history.
This is the first cover of the book, and it's stop share, and we're back.
Oh, thank you so much. That's
Amazing.
wonderful.
Thank you.
Well, Armando, thank you so much. It was so enjoyable to hear about your whole process in creating this great book and all of these wonderful characters. So thank you, because I know you're a very busy man. So I really appreciate you taking the time out to talk with us.
Okay. Believe me, this is relaxing for me. After the I started like at 9 a.m. presenting, the next year for the advertiser. It's a nightmare. It's a nightmare.
Well, good. I'm glad we could give you an enjoyable evening of relaxation.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah. And hopefully the next time it's going to be in
Thank
person.
you.
Yes, that's true.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you.
Right.
Prayers, fingers, everything.
Thank you.
Thank you,
you,
Armando.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Armando.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right. That was good. Worked out.
Wow, Lisi,
Oh,
thank
that
you
was-
so much.
Good job,
Welcome.
Lisa.
thank
It was my pleasure.
And thank you
That was
for
awesome.
inviting me.
Thank you.
Really.
That was so amazing.
He was amazing. He had so many great stories.
I know.
It was wonderful.
That was really great.
And your
Thanks,
questions
Lizette.
were great. The whole discussion was fabulous. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
It worked out really well. So I think,
Yeah.
Marge, wasn't this your idea to get him? I thought it was. Marge.
No, it was Annette. Well, yeah, it was my idea to get him. Annette,
But not the book. Right. I
Annette
knew you were
recommended the
involved.
book, and I said, "Oh, maybe you could get him, Lizette," because you said you knew him. So
Yeah. And I told Kelly that when, not right away, but if we're ever interested in reading the nonfiction book of Tony DePalma, the New York Times reporter who just wrote a nonfiction book about the neighborhood of Guanabacoa on Cuba and the people in it. So it's like a look at Cuba today in this particular neighborhood. And it kind of begins with the opening, the Obama opening, and then he's been reporting it all the way up to now, basically, or, relatively now. And he's a brilliant writer, and his wife is from Guanabacoa, which is like a suburb, if you can call it that, of Havana. And it's a kind of very famous town. So if we're ever interested in that topic, and I'm not pushing it, for any other reason except that I know him. So if we want to ever do another author, and his book just was published this month, we could always do that like later on.
Okay, no, I think that would be great because I think this just brings, this brings the book to life. I mean, this is
Yeah.
such an incredible
Yeah.
opportunity for all of us to just engage with him one-on-one, and it was
just how
great.
some of the characters were like based on his own family, and
Yes.
how he weaves that whole thing together, I thought was incredible, and the research he did.
Yeah.
And I love, like Lisa, you had said it, the way he wrote it like a puzzle, like you were constantly uncovering like the next clue. Like I remember that scene when he goes in the cemetery and all of a sudden I see all these names. I'm like, wait, who are all these people?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I'm like, wait, I don't know who all these people are yet. So
Yeah.
it was just, it just kept your interest going all the time. And back and forth is always good too. So, but between Hannah and Anna, and
Yeah.
it was great.
It's
And you
amazing.
learn
very
so
good.
much. I mean, it's a historical fiction, but you learn so much about history, and then so much more you learn just from the discussion with him today.
I didn't even know. For me, the St. Louis had come to the U.S. and been like, I did not know it had Cuba or Canada, you know.
I never knew it was intended to go to Cuba. I knew the three
Yeah, I didn't know
places turned
about
it away,
Cuba.
but I did
Yeah.
not know it was supposed to go to Cuba.
Yeah, you know, so that was all a total revelation to me.
Yeah.
I'm
And I thought
with-
the suspense he built that whole trip over with, like, you'd see the cables from the ship,
Right.
the tension of Alma, the mom. I mean, you
Yeah.
could feel it.